Hello again, everyone. It's great seeing you, and thanks for joining us for Tuesday's edition of Alaska Weather, 29th day of June 2021. One more day to go till we hit July. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. And the first graphic we've got up is, let's see, flood warning out. Weather headlines: flood warning for the Taku River near Juneau, and that's out until 2 p.m. Sunday due to a glacier lake dam failure. And so debris and rising water has been noted during the afternoon today, and that flood warning is out at this point in time until 2 p.m. Sunday. From there, we go to hazardous weather. Not yet. That's coming up though. Fire danger, and continuing to increase the fire danger through the central interior there, especially the upper Yukon and the Porcupine Rivers. You have the extreme fire danger expanded quite a bit over the last couple of days up there, with the very high fire danger extending down along the north side of the Alaska, down to the north slope of the Alaska Range and into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, and then eastward out toward eastern Seward Peninsula. And from there we go to the hazardous weather graphics, and there's still a flood advisory out in the yellow shaded area there, and that's for the, let's see, wrong one there. That's for the the flood advisory Chilkat River, and that's going to remain near flood stage. It's up around flood stage, expected to remain there, so minor flooding. Let's see, for the next few days, and then there's a flood watch out still through late tonight for the northern inner channels, and water levels high enough for minor flooding possible along the Chilkoot Trail. Actually, water is onto the Chilkoot Trail up in that area. And moving to the next slide here, we've got flood advisory, and that's for the Chukchi Sea coast, and that's due to 2 to 3 inches of rain falling over the DeLong Mountains Western Brooks Range, and that draining out to the coastline there. So there's a flood advisory for some minor flooding, rivers near Bankful in that area. Let's see, that's through Wednesday on that one, through tomorrow. And then flood watch remains out there for the Western Brooks Range area into the northern Kobuk, and then also the Noatak Valley. And that's for possible flooding due to another 1 to 3 inches of rain expected to fall in that area. Had some pretty significant rainfall amounts up in that area today. Noatak in the last 24 hours has picked up 1.5 inches. Kelly, same amount, 1.5 inches. And Ambler picking up 7/10 of an inch of precipitation there in the Kobuk Valley. Umiat Airfield, North Slope, picking up 2/3 of an inch of precipitation, while Kivalina had an inch even. Again, 24-hour amounts. Also some pretty significant rain falling over the Copper River Basin with persistent moisture there. Showers, isolated thunderstorms. See, Paxson, they had a 24-hour rainfall amount ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon of 1.25 inches, while Gulkana had just over an inch, 1.06 inches. And then farther to the west, Eureka had about a 1/2 inch of rain, and soaking rains also fell farther to the north there, Susitna Glacier. So very wet conditions there. Won't have to worry about any fire danger in those areas for a while probably. And otherwise, gusty winds with the system out over the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. Both the Fox Islands, western Alaska Peninsula had winds gusts 35 to as high as 50 miles per hour today. Winds gusting 35 miles an hour. St. George Island with periods of rain and fog, nothing too terribly heavy, anywhere from 1/10 to maybe a 1/4 inch of precipitation with that. And low pressure keeping it cloudy, damp and unsettled, and windy, breezy over the southern Bering Sea and all the way out to Shimianat too. Otherwise, a fair amount of clearing today up over the upper Yukon Valley area, and that leading to the high fire danger with increasing winds. Temperature in the lower 70s there, but really the wind kicking up is responsible for bringing the fire dangers up. And then looks like you can see moisture sliding northward there as that upper level ridge shifts eastward. Band of moisture slipping on up into the southern panhandle, cooler today by at least 20 degrees in some areas, back down to the 70s to near 80 in some areas instead of the 80s and mid 90s that we're seeing yesterday. And could be a shower developing there, maybe isolated thunderstorm possible, but nothing too terribly widespread at this point in time. Otherwise, good west winds there, gusting as high as, let's see, who had the peak wind gust up along the northwest coast. Let's see, it was 54 miles an hour. Ella Creek on the Seward Peninsula had a west wind gust 54 miles per hour with 40 to 55 mile per hour winds in the western Brooks Range. Very windy conditions there for the Brooks Range today, expected to continue into tonight. And that due to the frontal action up there, just north side of the front, not as windy along the Arctic coast there as it is farther to the south through the Brooks Range and into the northern Kobuk-Koyukuk valleys. That's where the gradient is the tightest, winds are the strongest, but widespread area precipitation all through that area, especially back toward the west. And let's see, I think Kotzebue picked up maybe a quarter of an inch of rain, and it really cuts off south of there into some sunshine or mid and high level cloud sunshine for the upper Yukon Valley. Scattered isolated showers along the Alaska Range, either side of the mountains, with the heaviest precipitation I mentioned, the Copper River Basin. And isolated thunderstorms possibly developing along the southern border of the Panhandle. Otherwise, tighter gradient and rain for the Alaska Peninsula. Gale force winds expected there tonight into tomorrow. You can see the gradient tightening up pretty good tonight as high pressure builds over the northern Kuskokwim Valley there, just south of the Yukon River, drying it out considerably. Lingering showers eastern Alaska Range throughout the night tonight, but all diminishing. That front gets held up to the north there, lying parallel to the wind flow, really not making, just kind of oscillates north and south a little bit before it makes a push to the south later on. And we'll see tomorrow kind of a wave back to the west there. It nudges the frontal boundary northward. That's where I have the red warm front drawn. So just chance of showers, Kivalina tomorrow. Much lighter winds, though, the gradient really slackening off. So the winds not the significant factor they have been through the Brooks Range. And rain also should start tapering off too tomorrow afternoon as that frontal boundary, the whole thing weakens. But it doesn't go away completely, and still a chance of showers or isolated thunderstorms Alaska Range. Otherwise not looking too bad, partly mostly sunny central southern Alaska, right on down into maybe northern Kodiak Island, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula. Temperatures 60s to mid to upper 70s for the highs, and cooler conditions, but basically dry for the Panhandle. And rain and wind diminish over the Alaska Peninsula. Chance of rain reaches Nunivak Island, maybe the Yukon Delta coast, possibly St. Lawrence Island. Stays windy and wet, especially northwest winds pretty good there for the Adak area, diminishing as you head toward Shimianatu. Outlook for Thursday. Winds really lighten up out over the western central Aleutians, and now just small craft advisory or barely small craft advisory winds for the Alaska Peninsula. And that front makes a push off to the east and northeast, so it shoves moisture into the southern Kuskokwim Valley, all across the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay. Rain and fog and breezy conditions, Kodiak Island. Increasing clouds, Cook Inlet late in the day. Otherwise mostly sunny and mild over the central eastern interior, North Gulf Coast. Panhandle, risk of thunderstorms to the north. And still that frontal boundary up along the western Brooks Range to the eastern Arctic coast keeps periods of rain up in that area. Low temperatures tonight falling a shade below the frost point there for the central Arctic coast, otherwise mid-30s. And that extends into part of the North Slope, and then back into the 40s for the Brooks Range. Upper 45 to 50 in the interior, Tanana Valley, Fairbanks, to Wilson Air Force Base, North Pole, maybe mid-50s for your lows, and upper 40s to lower 50s South Central Alaska, in the 50s for the Panhandle, 40s out to the west. And for highs tomorrow, 70, 75, Upper Yukon Valley, Tanana Valley, Kuskokwim Valley, and 75, 6 or 7 in the Copper River Basin, Susitna Valley area, down into Palmer and Kenai Peninsula, 60 to 72 for the highs. And notice the Panhandle now, highs all in the 60s with upper 40s for the Bering Sea, or upper 40s for the Aleutians, mid-50s for the Pribilofs, lows, upper 20s, Point Barrow, otherwise in the 30s for the North Slope, and into the Brooks Range, 40s, and then 40s and 50s, the remainder of the state, and then highs back into the lower 80s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
We've gone to flying weather, IFR, central western Arctic coast, into the western Brooks Range along mountains, western Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, much of the Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians, and a good portion of the Alaska Peninsula, southern Kodiak Island, Fognak Island marginal, and then areas of marginal VFR, Togiak Bay, otherwise VFR across southern Alaska, northward till you get into the northern Kobuk-Koyukuk valleys, marginal VFR from there out to the eastern Arctic coast. IFR, Yakutat, northern panhandle, coastal areas in the south, and then inside waters now, marginal VFR. And moving on to the outlook for the afternoon, becomes VFR over the southern panhandle, over the inside waters, IFR right along the coast and just off the eastern North Gulf coast, southern Alaska, central interior right on down to the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, Bristol Bay, and Chillicothe Strait, VFR, marginal VFR, Kobuk Valley, IFR Noatak Valley, and the northwest coast to about Point Ley, otherwise the North Slope Arctic coast marginal. And the Bering Sea, a little improvement out there, Pribilos becoming marginal, Fox Islands marginal, but IFR from Adak westward to about Shimianatu, a little bit of improvement there as well, south side of the Alaska Peninsula IFR. And for Thursday morning, marginal VFR, North Slope Arctic Coast Brooks Range, some IFR western North Slope into Kotzebue Sound, and through the Strait, St. Lawrence Island, IFR, same thing for St. Matthew, Nunivak Island, probably St. Paul as well, and IFR for the Aleutians to Unmak Island, Unalaska Island marginal, and Alaska Peninsula, mostly IFR, especially south side, and VFR, Bristol Bay, and Southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay has IFR now, Kachemak Bay marginal, Prince William Sound marginal VFR, and IFR hugging the North Gulf coast as well as the coast of the Panhandle. Thursday afternoon, marginal VFR, Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and IFR getting pretty widespread, Kodiak Island, right up to the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula. Marginal VFR possibly as far north as Seward, with Prince William Sound marginal in the water-covered areas, and IFR on the south coast of the Panhandle, but VFR, northern and central inside waters. Passes Anatuvik, marginal VFR for the day tomorrow, and mostly marginal for the entire day, either approach there for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. Rainy, VFR. Looking good for windy as well, VFR. Mostly clear skies for Isabel. And Mentasta, good VFR flying for both passes on either approach. Same forecast for Teneda and Portage, VFR as well. Chilkoot and White, IFR becoming marginal, a little improvement throughout the day. And for the freezing levels, quite a gradient now across the North Slope from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast. You can see 2,000 to 8,000 feet up in that area. Otherwise, 10,000 feet, you got to drop all the way down to Southern Cook Inlet, and 10 to 14,000 feet across the Panhandle. Cooler out over the Aleutians, about 4,000 to 6,000 feet over the central Aleutians. And a band of moisture, that weakening front, still could see some considerable moderate rime icing over the Alaska Peninsula, but just light to very isolated icing of the rime variety. They're approaching the southwest coast up to St. Lawrence Island, and then probably could be mixed icing, just a threat there for the central to western Aleutians. And then that band of moisture keeps a threat of icing there for the North Slope and Arctic coast. Jet stream, upper level low tracking eastward now as a ridge over western Canada slowly pushes eastward. And so cooler, cloudier, showery conditions for the Panhandle, and south winds 100 knots blowing across the Alaska Peninsula at 9,000 feet. Southerlies with that pretty good system over the central Aleutian. Southerlies 40 to 60 knots there, 40 knots along the Yukon Delta coast. And northerlies, north-northeast, about 60 knots there for the western Aleutians. Westerly flow up on the Arctic coast, 45 knots, North Slope. Lightening up, though, for the western Arctic coast. And then at 3,000 feet, much lighter flow out of the west up there. Otherwise, south winds up to 55 knots there for the Alaska Peninsula. Northwest 35 near Dixon Entrance, 40 to 60 knot winds with the Aleutian low. Turbulence, look for considerable moderate chop, lee side of the Alaska Peninsula there, as well as the Aleutian, especially for small aircraft. Light to isolated moderate chop expected on the south coast of the Panhandle, roughly Port Alexander on down across Prince of Wales Island. Otherwise, pretty smooth over the interior.
Hello, I'm a GOES-R series weather satellite orbiting 22,000 miles above Earth.
I can see a lot of cool stuff from up here, and I take pictures of it with my spiffy camera that has 16 different settings. I have such good eyesight, I can see clouds, snow, smoke, smog, and ash, so I can warn you about dangerous conditions and help you avoid them. When storms are brewing, I watch them closely and help with hurricane, tornado, and flood warnings to help keep you safe. And my lightning mapper tracks lightning strikes way up in the sky, even through dark, dense clouds. I also help with search and rescue missions. I listen for distress signals from emergency beacons and tell search and rescue teams just where to find people who need help. But even when I'm keeping a close eye on Earth, I'm monitoring weather out here in space, too. I watch the sun for big bursts of energy, which send waves of radiation toward Earth that can affect power grids, block communication with planes, cause errors in GPS, and damage satellites. Space weather is also very dangerous for astronauts working outside the International Space Station. I warn them so they can get inside where they'll be safe. So the next time you watch a weather report or check your phone for the forecast, remember, that's me. So look to the sky and wave. I'll be here. Whoa! Things are looking pretty bad down there. But don't worry. I'm going to give weather forecasters a heads up and help you stay safe. I'm a GOES-R series weather satellite, and one of my jobs is to keep an eye on Earth's weather as I orbit above. But I'm 22,000 miles above Earth. How does your local weather forecaster know what I see all the way up here? First, I have to figure out what's going on. I point my special camera at the Earth and take pictures of the clouds I see below. My pictures show where the clouds are, but I also take lots of other notes about the clouds. For example, how high they reach into the atmosphere, how much rain they might cause, and when a severe storm may be forming. But I can't keep all of this information to myself. I have to share it with weather forecasters down on Earth. A big antenna is waiting for my call. Since I'm a satellite, I send my pictures and notes in a computer language of ones and zeros. Luckily, the antenna speaks my language. Computers connected to the antenna organize my notes and combine all of the pictures and cloud information and translate them into weather maps. They send a version of the maps back up to me. I'll hold on to these for later. Another copy of the maps is split into smaller pieces. This helps the maps move faster from one place to another. The map pieces are then sent for processing before being sent back up in the sky to a communication satellite. From there, the maps are picked up by antennas at the National Weather Service forecast offices in each region. There are more than 100 offices. I also take the maps that I received and send them out to companies that specialize in making the maps more colorful and better for viewing on TVs and computers. The colorful maps and the maps from the forecast offices then go to your local weather forecaster. The forecaster combines the information from these maps with lots of other information, like model forecast data and radar data, to make predictions about the upcoming weather in your area. And that's how I help you find out if bad weather is going to ruin your afternoon plans. You're welcome. Soon it will be my time to shine. In outer space. I'm the GOES-R satellite. That stands for Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite. And the R stands for my order in this series of weather satellites. Like my older siblings before me, I'll do a lot for watching weather, but I'm pretty special because I have a lot of new gadgets. I'm originally from Colorado, but my journey to space has a few stops along the way. I'll be shipped in a very special satellite shipping container to Kennedy Space Center. Moving me around is not easy. I'm over 18 feet wide and weigh 6,000 pounds. And then things get really exciting. I get loaded onto an Atlas V541 launch vehicle. A big rocket! Woo! After Atlas and I blast off together, my compartment separates from the launch vehicle and I continue to climb higher and higher. Then I break away completely and unfurl my solar panel and antenna. After that, I have to use my thrusters to get into just the right position, 22,000 miles above the ground and traveling 1.9 miles per second to keep up with Earth's rotation. And then I can officially start my job along with my fellow GOES sisters, where I take advanced pictures for more accurate weather forecasts, map lightning in real time, and improve the monitoring of the sun's activity. It's going to be so awesome! I can't wait!
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the segment. And looking at today's sea ice analysis, not a lot of change from yesterday, although very thin remaining shore-fast ice right along the northwest coast there, Point Hope on down toward Kotzebue, thinner than it was yesterday, and continue to slowly thaw out. But with the gusty winds, westerlies and west-southwesterlies, the main push of the ice fields will obviously be off to the east-northeast. And for the coastal water forecast, moving on to for the southeast coast, we'll see that northwest winds at 25 knots for small craft advisories on the south coast, seas 8 to 10 feet, northwest 20 knots, north coast 7-foot seas, light winds, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, northern inside waters 10 knots from the southeast, and Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait looking at a northwest wind at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. And then for the day Thursday, northwest 5 knots for the northern central inside waters, 10 knots for the southern inside waters, so light winds all out of the northwest or variable to northwest, slight seas. And the south coast, northwest 25 knots, small craft advisories 8-foot seas, central coast northwest at 20 knots and 15 knots from the northwest for the north coast. And Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, southwest 15 knots, southern Cook Inlet south at 20, Kamishak Bay, small craft advisory, southwest 25, western North Gulf Coast, southwest winds 25 knots, Barren Islands, eastern North Gulf Coast, 20-knot winds from the west and southwest with 5 to 6-foot seas, Prince William Sound, south winds 15 with 2-foot seas. And then variable to southeast for Prince William Sound on Thursday with pretty slight seas and speeds about 10 knots, variable to southeast 10 knots for Cook Inlet. And Kamishak Bay, east winds 30 knots, 8-foot seas. Barren Islands, small craft advisories also 25 knots from the southeast with 8-foot seas. And 10 to 15 knot southeast breeze for the North Gulf Coast. Kodiak Island, 20 to 25 knot southwest winds tomorrow. For the Alaska Peninsula, gale warnings. Sustained, southeast 35 knots, 9 to 17-foot seas. Bristol Bay, southeast 30 knots with 6-foot seas. And for the Kodiak Island, or for Kodiak on Thursday, we'll go east-southeast 30 knots, just under gale force with 12-foot seas. And small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, south to southeast 25 knots. Gale warnings now for the Bristol Bay zone, southeast 35 knots, seas 8 feet. Fox Islands and Alaska Island, south 25 to 30 knots. Unmac Island, about the same, 30 knots from the south with 12 to 16-foot seas. Adak and Atka, on average, south winds 30 knots, 11 to 14-foot seas. Gale warnings, Amchitka to Shimia, 35 knots out of the northwest with 12 to 14-foot seas. Those drop off significantly, especially Kiska to Shimia down to west at 15 knots, and Chitka northwest 20, seas coming down to 10 feet. Adak and Atka north to northwest 20 to 25 knots, 8 to 12 foot seas. And southeast 25 for the Fox Islands with 5 to 11 foot seas. Southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, gale warnings, east winds 35 knots. Pribilof, southeast 35 knots for gale warnings, 16 foot seas. East 30 knots there, northern Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island, Yukon Delta coast, 11 to 12 foot seas. St. Lawrence Island, southeast at 20 knots with 6 foot seas. And for the outlook on Thursday, St. Lawrence Island, small craft advisories, east winds 25 knots, Yukon Delta coast, northern Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island, also winds will be out of the east at 25 knots with 8 to 9 foot seas. And south of Nunivak Island, Kuskokwim Delta coast, southeast winds 30 knots, 9 foot seas. Light winds for the Pribilofs, northwest at 10, seas subsiding to 5 feet. Central and entire Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, west winds 5 to 10 knots, and then 15 knots out of the northeast from Cape Beaufort, Cape Thompson to Wales, southwest at 20. And for Thursday, swing it around to the northeast for the western Arctic coast all the way down to Wales, small craft advisories, 25 to 30 knot winds in that whole area with seas running 4 to 7 feet. Otherwise, central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast looking at north to northeast breeze at 10 knots. And for tonight, big storm or a pretty active front, low pressure area bring gale force winds into the Alaska Peninsula and Pribilofs with windy conditions for the central Aleutians and rain, possibly heavy at times, especially for the Alaska Peninsula. Chance of risk of a shower for the northern panhandle and lingering showers eastern Alaska range, so diminishing there. But flood watch continues for the western Brooks Range into the northern Kobuk and then the Noatak valleys for the next day or so for another 2 to 3 inches of rain, or another 1 to 3 inches of rain. And rain will extend to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Otherwise, for tomorrow, partly mostly sunny southern Alaska, chance of showers or isolated thunderstorms along the Alaska Range, but sunny in the interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.